Hey everybody, this is Taylor with Top Pick Trading here for your Friday bar by bar lesson. It's Friday, May 17th, 2024, and this will be my third time recording this because you couldn't hear the sound on the first one. The second one, I accidentally deleted my data about 3/4 of the way through the review. So third time's a charm, hopefully. I'm going to try to talk a little louder because my mic's really not picking up my voice. Hopefully this one's good. So let's get started on the review. So you come in. This is about 8 o'clock right in here, I think. And you'd come in and draw your overnight highs, overnight lows, and any micro trends you have in between. So we've got this downtrend working here. No break and new low, but that happens sometimes in range structure. So we just adapt to that. We draw this uptrend here. It looks like probably a break and new high, but it could be a little bit wider. Let's see. And we go. So you actually start out right out of the gate with this lower high. There's not much room, and I'm a little bit worried about the wider uptrend. Probably is a break a new high, but if this formed maybe a little bit higher in this area, more room to that EMA, I would consider it. But here, right here you would have 3 points. But if you take it right here, you only got a point, so it's a little bit concerning. So I would avoid that one there. See, it would have stopped you out anyway. And it pushes higher, and at this point, maybe that wider uptrend is valid. It looks pretty decent. That was the concern, and it ended up being the case. So we turn here, kind of just in no man's land above the overnight high so far. I guess this would now be the overnight highs, but we'll keep this resistance level and see what happens. So get a break from that, just drops lower. Got a micro downtrend working here. And let's see, it looks like we may be bouncing at the midline. No, we continue lower. Micro downtrend still intact. And here's the open. We actually push higher, kind of near the midline, kind of a random area a little bit. Now that level seems to kind of be offering some resistance, but now we're pushing through it. Drops lower to the EMA. We had this micro uptrend here that's got to break a new high as well. We got this lower high. Got that lower wick on it. Kind of no man's land after this push up. I know this is played out, but that doesn't mean it's going to immediately reverse. So we'll keep an eye on that. And it would have worked nicely for a scalp. We've got this micro downtrend working now. You can see this is just really, really typical range behavior. Strong moves down, strong moves up, strong moves down, strong move up, strong move down. So really, more than anything, unless we've got a confirmed trend that returns to the EMA without a lot of counter momentum, we're going to instead be trading support and resistance. So keep that in mind. This does break here, pushes up. The first entry short, pushes to a new low, finding some support, but dropping through it eventually. And we get this really nice bar here after 2 legs down. Break from this channel and a new low, break from this channel and a couple legs down. Fortunately, it's not quite at the 2 support levels that have shown to be true support, which is this level and then the overnight lows. This level it's pretty close to, but it's closing below that. It is a really strong bar, but I just wish it closed. I wish this support level was a little bit lower, and we closed right on that. Unfortunately, a little bit below it. And you can see, though, it would have worked nicely. Pushes back to the EMA, find some resistance there, get this lower high congested. Let's see if this general area holds. Just chopping sideways, so nothing here. Nice bar, but great congestion. Just fighting between this support level and the EMA. And pushes higher, just chopping. Drops lower, mid-range, really nothing here. Let's see if this support level holds and we drop below it. And now it appears we've got a second touch that's bouncing in this area, just a little bit lower. You can see that still holds prices fairly well, touches the wicks of these candles and then the bodies of these candles. So I'd be watching this area. Drops lower. Now we get this second entry long. This one's pretty tempting. Not a lot of room, unfortunately, though. That body's closing a little bit lower. Does feel like this is probably the bottom. It doesn't appear like there's any kind of bigger trend at play that needed a retest. All these appear to be little independent trends with breaks and new lows. So you're at the general support, so if you take that, I understand. Wish it was a little bit lower as far as where it closed to give you a little more room to that EMA. Um, but let's see if we can get a higher low to confirm our bias here. And we consider a higher low. And now we do get the higher low. It's not really off the support area, but there's a case that there is some support here as well. You can see there's kind of two areas, like I mentioned earlier. It's a really nice bar. Got these three bullish bars here in a row showing you that there may be some building momentum to the upside. It had a really good setup bar that closed on its low, and then tick lower here, a few ticks, then reverse strongly. So I like this trade. It does kind of appear to be in the middle, just a tad, but it's still towards the bottom, right in this general area. So feels like all the downtrends have played out. So I think this is a pretty good trade here. I'll mark it aggressive just because it's not completely ideal, but I think you can highly consider that trade. And it does push really strong to the upside, so it would have worked nicely. You got a nice micro uptrend working here. Let's see if this resistance area holds. And it pushes higher, so at this point, maybe this is the true resistance, the actual overnight highs, excuse me. Continues higher, turns now at that level as anticipated. We get a first entry long, and now we push right back up to that same level. So this is a triple test here, really small bar. I think, yeah, just 3 ticks. So maybe you consider that. I'm a little worried that you're going to get a second leg to a new high since this trend was pretty strong here. But that doesn't always happen in ranges. So if you take that, I get it. Just 3 ticks, so it's not much of a risk, and you're pretty far from that EMA. Personally, I waited on this one, but I think it's a viable option. So just because of the size, I'll get aggressive. But if I had to choose between these two, I think this is a better trade here. And now we're pushing back to the EMA. Finds a little bit of support for dropping lower here. Looks like maybe there's a micro trend working lower. You may draw it off this at first, but oftentimes in ranges, it starts from that lower high where the steeper part of the move actually starts. Never really even got a chance for a failure. Nothing ticked higher here, so we just started pushing lower. Continues dropping. Micro downtrend holds pretty well. Maybe an overshoot, or it could be two-tiered. It's kind of hard to know. Midline holds pretty well if it is two-tiered, so we'll keep that. It does bounce at this general support area again, but a move like that, it may warrant a retest. Let's see how we correct to the EMA and if we can get a second entry short. We're going to be very cautious of how this corrects and if this trend, if this bullish momentum forms a nice micro uptrend. If it came off that support, it could just reverse like it did here. Really get that range action. So get a first entry short here. The EMA did hold. And now we get the second entry short. It looks like maybe the micro uptrend did play out. Unfortunately, you closed above that EMA by a tick, and then on the setup bar, and then on the signal bar, closed right into that EMA. Once again, really small risk, just 4 ticks. So if you took a chance there, I get it. But personally, I waited on that one. Want to see if we can get a lower high here. And it looks like it would have worked. Coming back for a lower high. It's moved a little bit far to consider a lower high, but maybe we still get a good bar off that EMA that we can consider. And we do here. You can see there's a little bit of room here between where it actually closed and the EMA. But I would take this trade probably, just expecting to get to this. You've got a little bit of area, a little bit of room to that support, but this is strong enough, like I said, to probably retest, especially when it didn't correct extremely strong to that EMA. And then you can see here we sold off fairly strong here. So what is that, 5 bars in a row that are bearish? So it may get that second leg down to a new low. And unfortunately, though, it does not trigger. So no setup there. I'd be a lot more cautious in range behavior if your signal bars aren't triggering, especially if you're trading the EMA kind of in the middle. So I would avoid that trade now that it did not trigger. And it does push lower, so it would have worked nicely, but no way to know that at the time. So let's see what happens at this general support area. Pushes lower. And this could be some kind of wider trend, but you want to stay cautious of this and range behavior. I'll draw it just as a something to stay cautious of, but I wouldn't trust to take a trade off of it necessarily, or of a reason to avoid a long trade. If that makes sense. So we're pushing below this. It did hold again. Now it pushes higher. Just kind of turned in no man's land. Not quite at the support area right here or at the overnight lows. So not all that much room. It's a nice bar, but I think you probably want to avoid that. Pushes strongly to the upside here, and it looks like maybe that gets a break a new high if you're drawing these tight, which I recommend in ranges. Turns here, we get a first entry long, but like I mentioned, this is played out. Pushed pretty strongly off the support area now, so really anything could happen. And dropping sideways, the second entry long is not a good setup anyway. This is played out, tested, inside bar, no trade there. Drops lower. Now it's finding some support here, it seems. It's a little bit congested, and also there's a little bit of a wick there, so I'm worried that this may want to get a true retest to the low. Also notice now we've pushed through this support area a couple times, so it may not be quite as strong as we thought it was. And if you include the push through right here, that's twice now. So I think you want to wait on that. May work for a small scalp, but the EMA does hold. Continues lower now, all the way to the overnight lows. See what happens here. And we get this really strong bar here off the overnight lows. Look at that lower wick there. It tells you there's a lot of buying right at that level. Gave away the answer. So now this has played out. They break in two legs. So I like this trade a lot. So far from the EMA, several points. Yeah, about 3 points from the EMA. Such a strong bar. All the downtrends have played out. Good trade. And as we accidentally saw, that it worked. Got a strong micro uptrend now working off those lows. Pushing strongly. Now gets a break outside. New high. Dropping sideways now. So you can see on these ranges, these strong moves, once they break, sometimes even before they break, they just, out of seemingly nowhere, they dissipate and turn into congestion or reverse. That's typical range behavior. You can see now, not just turning out of nowhere. Oftentimes it's at some level. That does appear to be a pretty valid resistance. Now we push lower, dropping right around that EMA. Get this second entry long here, but this is just right at mid-range after your uptrend has played out and turned short of these overnight highs now for 3 times. So I'd be careful about thinking this is just going to return to the highs. And it returns to this resistance, so you may have gotten a small scalp, but no way to know that. And it does turn off that resistance level now. Turning to the overnight lows. Looks like we may have a downtrend now in play. Dropping strongly lower, no setup for anything anyway. And this could be an overshoot, or like I mentioned earlier, may want to draw it off the lower high. And this could even be two-tier. That fits fairly well off that midline. So let's see if we return to the EMA, and starting to now. And we turn off that resistance on the first entry, unfortunately. But I would say this is a confirmed downtrend. You maybe want to make a measured move of the range, which takes us all the way down to here, right around 53.04 area. So let's see if this downtrend stays intact. Maybe on a first break, we can consider a second entry short at the EMA, or even a return to these overnight lows, maybe acting as resistance. It'll all depend, like in all these situations, ranges, how it corrects to that EMA. And it pushes lower. And now do break the downtrend short of the measured move. So we can consider a second entry short maybe if this downtrend, or excuse me, if this micro uptrend dissipates some of this momentum. So right now we've got 3 strong bullish bars closing almost all on their high. So we need to stay cautious of this. Maybe if the first entry pushes way lower and really helps to dissipate some of this counter momentum against us, breaks the micro trend, returns to the EMA, sells off. So that's what we're looking for. Let's see what happens. Get a 4 strong bullish bar closing fairly above the EMA. And then there's the first entry there, very weak, closing above the EMA, actually ends up bullish. So now we're going to need some bigger break and retest and maybe a lower high below the EMA to consider a long. Otherwise, this could just reverse. That's what happens in ranges a lot. So keeping that in mind. Continues higher. Really, it looks like the micro downtrend is actually still in play, or excuse me, micro uptrend. No setups here. Now we get the second entry, but first break of the micro uptrend, and we get the retest here, weak doji, and it looks like prices now are just kind of fighting in between the overnight lows and the EMA, and now it looks like the EMA held. You've already got the break and retest, little inside bar, so no long setup. Let's see if we can push strongly below the EMA and get some kind of lower high. Otherwise, maybe switching biases here. And the EMA holds, and we push strongly to the upside. And we may be looking for a measured move. So at this point, once we push above the overnight lows back into the range, especially after we've corrected, let's see, yeah, over 2/3 of the downtrend, you can pretty much throw out the idea of this retesting. And notice we came up a couple points short of the measured move of the overnight range. So, like Mack mentions, if you come up a little bit short of a measured move in a certain direction, it may end up going even stronger in the other direction. So we're keeping that in mind. Like we could get this measured move, and we do. Now this retest leg is even longer than the initial leg. There may be some wider uptrend here. I'd stay cautious of it in the ranges, but we'll keep an eye on it. It looks like it may already have an overshoot, and you can see it turned once again right at that resistance. Really no setups though. And we're correcting to the EMA. Let's see if, or excuse me, to the key entry point. Let's see if we can come back to the EMA and maybe give us a strong buy signal. And you can see that key entry point kept holding. I would have been a little bit worried, like I said, of the overshoot, but since that key entry point held again, it seems like it's valid. It looks like it's just probably going to run straight up to the overall highs of the range, and it does. Key entry point still holding, trend lines intact, and turns somewhat at the overnight highs here, but not much rejection. And this uptrend's a big enough, strong enough structure to probably warrant a retest. So let's see if we can get some second entry long, enough room to these overnight highs. And we get the first entry, and now we get the second entry. Unfortunately, it's closing right near these highs. If this traded down a little further with a nice lower wick, then pushed right back up, really test the EMA, closes here with a lot more room. I think you can probably consider it also if it kind of corrected a bit more this resistance level and tested it from the other side to see if it acts as support. We could consider it probably, but right here, I don't think there's enough room. It's also an inside bar, so not much to consider there. Now it looks like it may want to turn again. It does drop right through that EMA, but in my opinion, no setup. The bar's not that great, and this may real retest. I mean, that's not much of a retest for a structure. And then at this point, it's 15 minutes after 3:30. That's all there is. So let's see how it finished. Dropped lower. It did test that resistance, acting as support. Closed a little bit below it, but and then you get a strong leg up, and get the second leg up here for retest, and now it's actually third leg. So yeah, that's how I saw it today. Not many setups. I really like the fail break lower from this little bit tighter range, and it's also at the overnight lows. So I think that's probably the trade of the day. A couple other chances. Maybe you take the aggressive one here, just due to the small size of it. A lot of the times, though, like I mentioned with this one, these will get a couple legs up. This is a fairly strong uptrend here, so it may want a couple legs. So taking a little bit of a risk on that one. It is pretty far from the EMA. So maybe you take the chance on that one. And then I like the higher low here. All the downtrends have played out 4 times now. We couldn't get through this general area. It's a little hard to know exactly where it is, but still think that higher low is a decent trade. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the lesson. Be back next week. I'll have a great weekend.